CAB members may present items. No action may be taken. Any item requiring commission action will be scheduled on a future agenda. Do we have any county advisory boards Rex?
Rex Flowers, Washoe County. At our CAB meeting, we had a discussion about season setting, date versus day. Originally in 2007, when we converted to a date rather than a day, there was comments at that time about there'd be a follow-up with sportsmen to get input and stuff, but to give the system a try. This 2013 February meeting will be 6 years. There's never been any input as an actual input, just it's all been hearsay, comment-wise. We'd like to see, ask the commission if they would get with NDOW and ask about having some sort of a questionnaire, maybe put either online or emailed out to all those individuals who applied through that system. And this is specific to mule deer. And the reason for asking the commission rather than the tag allocation and hunt committee is, Jack, you've been tied up for a year. You're on so many committees, you've never had a meeting. That's one of the things that Scott spoke to. And it's time for us to stop and hear what the sportsmen of the state have to say. They are the paying clientele, and we should get their input. Maybe they want to stay with a date rather than day, or a day rather than a date. We don't know, but it's time to hear from them. Thank you.
Thank you.
For the record, Paul Dixon, Clark County. Just a heads up to Director Mayer and Commissioner, former Chairman Macbeth, and now Commissioner Macbeth and Commissioner Young were at the meeting we had in Overton, and my board member, Mike Pergola, plans on coming to my next board meeting with over 1,000 signatures from sportsmen and businesses for the reasons and the need to reopen the Lake Mead hatchery. And I wanted to ask that we consider agendizing that at least as an informational item from your staff so that we can discuss that and have it on the agenda and make it something, and maybe one of the commissioners would add to what I said if you feel if I've misrepresented anything, but I think that's where we are. He's a pretty adamant. I brought him onto my board specifically because he's a sports fisherman and represents them, and he's doing his job. He's been out surveying businesses and individuals, and he's putting together a pretty good case from business owners and others about the financial and sporting need to have the hatchery reopened. Thank you.
Chairman, if I could make a comment on that. I attended that meeting, the CAB meeting the other night, and I found that conversation very interesting and critically important to our county, and I agree with Mr. Dixon. I would request that, or make a motion, or whatever the rules are, that we study this issue, because fishing in Clark County is not what it used to be, and a lot of us can attest to that, and we need to get it back. And I think there's some things that he said that at least we ought to take a look at. And I know there's cost is a big issue, but we're not doing our jobs if we don't look at this issue, because a lot of people that fish aren't. There's a lot of cops that I've worked with over the years, that's what they retired to do now, and I hear constantly that we need to make some improvements. So I don't know the proper procedure. If I make a motion to make that part of the record, or you'll do it.
He has it noted, and when we bring stuff up like that, then when we set the agenda, we'll get that on there.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Just as a sidebar, what we normally do is I keep track of these requests. We put together a draft agenda. We send it to the chairman. He takes a look at it, makes some adjustments, and gets some input, and then that's what we publish. So thanks. That'd be good.
Any other county advisory boards have anything? Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item number 5, approval of minutes. The commission may take action to approve meeting minutes from the May 11th and 12th, 2012, and the June 22nd, 23rd, 2012. Everybody had a chance to review the minutes, and any additions, deletions, changes?
Thank you,
Mr. McNish.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I had one small but probably important clarification to make on the for the June minutes. It was on page 12, the 5th line of the first paragraph. It was in reference to talking about Red Rock Conservation Area, Mount Charleston, and it just referenced spring or springs, and we wanted to reference Spring Mountains, I think, or Mountain Springs
Mountain
area.
Springs, I believe.
Mountain Springs area. So if we could just make that clarification, I think it was an important one. Other than that, I'm telling you, the amount of work that staff's going through to deal with these minutes is phenomenal. I mean, we're talking 43 pages, which is incredibly succinct for one thing. 2 sets of them, and it doesn't even touch the committees. I mean, the amount of minutes are coming from the activities and stuff. I suspect that the department would totally disagree with earlier comments that not a lot's been going on. They've been trying to figure out how they're going to deal with these. So my hats are off to staff for the work that you're doing on the minutes. They're outstanding, number one, and I think most of us realize how much it's impacted you guys. So appreciate the work and the quality of it.
Could I make a comment too, just as a FYI? Dave, we appreciate the words of support. It is drowning a small staff, and we're looking at other ways to deal with it, and we've been talking to New about it. It may be as simple as using the video and actually having just bulletized and put where in the video you could go to get the verbatim and listen to it yourself. So we're looking at other ways to try to provide as much detail as we've been providing, and we understand the sensitivity, but do it in a way that we can actually get them out sooner, because we've got 2 meetings of the trapping committee, backed up because we just don't have enough time to get the voluminous minutes. So.
And with the video working faster than it used to, you used to be able to go to bed and wake up in the morning and hope you could watch the video, and it seems to be working better now, and I think the more we can use technology, the better off we are, and then you'd really get to see the intent of what was said instead of what Suzanne's trying to interpret or the intent was. So I think that's a better way to go.
Exactly. And then if we ever have any issue, legal-wise or others, that we needed to actually verbatim do it, then we could focus on certain areas instead of having the whole thing as a verbatim as much as we can. So we're the only agency that provides these kinds of minutes at the depth that we do. So.
Any other items on the minutes? It is an action item. We'll take it out to the public. Any public have anything on the minutes? Seeing none, we'll bring it back. Call for motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to approve the minutes with the slight amendment.
Motion by Commissioner McNitch.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Macbeth. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Unanimous. We'll move on to item 6, amended Upland game stamp funding request, Eastern Region Biologist Jenne for possible action. The Commission may review and ask to be approved the amended request for funding of a sage-grouse radio calling project in Elko County. Mr. Jenne?
Thank you, Commission. I'm the supervising habitat biologist out of the Eastern region. There was a opportunity at the last commission meeting, I guess, to consider amplifying some of the funding towards this project. I wanted to come and give you a synopsis of what it was that we did to this. I know that there were some questions at the time about the technology that was being utilized and why the costs associated with it. What we did is we used this project proposal was submitted to try to facilitate getting these GPS collars into the hands of the mines so that they could accumulate baseline data for the sage-grouse for projects that they're associated with or developing. So it's a very costly technology, as you can see from the budget, is that it's about $4,000 for each unit and about $1,000 for data management. So in order to try to get really meaningful data, it's very costly. And so this was an opportunity to take advantage of the mine assessment fees that NDOW has, and then also supplement that with Upland game stamp monies, kind of come at it in a collective approach and try to facilitate this data collection effort. One of the things that's really key and instrumental to this is that we are trying to cooperate with USGS and Pete Coates, kind of a sage-grouse guru, to try to bring a holistic approach to it so that the data is as meaningful as possible and so that it could cover overarching needs. The GPS collars give us the ability, even though they are so costly, they give us the ability to acquire so many more points and determine those fine-scale movements versus even, say, the VHF collars. VHF collars are very cost-friendly in initial investment, but the follow-up costs on them are so much more because we have to put labor out on the ground to physically follow up on those birds. These GPS transmitters that we use, we can actually hang them on the bird. They actually uplink to a satellite, and they can be followed up remotely. So the back-end costs on those are very, very reduced. Battery lives on them are about a 3-year period. And just to give you an idea, one of the projects that we're dealing with USGS up in my area, 23 collars we acquired in about 3 to 4 months. We acquired roughly 3,000 data points. To do that with VHF would have, with that many birds, you just would have had to saturate the country because it is such an intermittent follow-up. So it'll be very, very good to get this into the mine's hands so that as they're planning their projects, they can see what the birds use. If there's opportunities to avoid those areas, they can do that. Opportunities to minimize, they can go about that. And then probably the most meaningful is on the back end when it comes time to mitigate, we can do the most meaningful mitigation by putting the mitigation to where the birds use. So that's what this effort's about. If you guys have any questions, I can try to address those.
Commissioner McBeth.
What are the life of the collars, and I guess at some point, if the bird dies, that are we able to recover the collars and release them?
Yes, sir. They are about a 3-year battery life. Well, they're solar units, but typically they last about 3 years. And they do have a built-in VHF small transmitter that's attached to them, so we can easily, even though you're getting a GPS location, you can follow them and get relatively close, but then once you're there, then you can break out the handheld receiver and actually find it. USGS actually had to go out on one of their projects and the bird died in the field before the farmer had cut hay, and it was still standing alfalfa, which you can only imagine how difficult it would be to find that, and they actually tracked one down in that. So, so yeah, as those collars, either birds die or predated or whatever, we can recover those collars and then get them back out on the birds. So that would be part of that effort.
That was Commissioner Grant's alfalfa.
Commissioner Drew.
Yeah, well, and I appreciate the input on this, and I just had a couple clarifying questions. One, if you look at the support material, total funds requested from this program is $50,000. I think we approved an initial shot of money, if I'm not mistaken, in Elko. So is the 50 in addition to what's already been approved?
So yeah, this would have been, so total funds requested was asking for $50,000 for mining assessment and $50,000 from Upland game stamp. So it would be in addition to when it was seen before, I believe it was at $60,000, and so we bumped it up $40,000, $20,000 to each category to try to, right now, as you are all aware, mining is just going crazy. And so we do have a lot of opportunity to get these out on the ground, and so we figured if there was a tendency or acceptance towards bumping up this, you know, we would like to try to include more mines. It'd be probably more meaningful to the overarching views or research from USGS.
Commissioner, you're basically deciding on an additional $20,000.
20,000, correct, okay.
Because we have the money in the budget with the mining assessment fee ready to go.
Any other question? Commissioner McNinch?
And what we were working with was an additional 40?
No, you approved 30, because we had 30 mining assessment fee, which is in our core budget. So you approved 30. We're asking for an additional 20.
Okay, but this is part of the money that didn't get extended. This is what's left of that money. Help me out here. I lost
There's
track.
a balance in the Upland Game Fund. And we had ample dollars, and one of the questions the commissioners had, well, why don't we spend more of it?
Okay.
Right?
All right.
Let's get more on the ground, and that's what we came up with.
All right.
And I confused things when I spoke up, both mining assessment
You're
and
fine, it's
Upland,
me.
but yeah,
Trust me.
I apologize.
At the last meeting, didn't we approve more than 30? I mean, the 30 was what was in here. I'm trying to remember the wording. Was that?
If I recall right, 30 is what was requested for this program.
Yeah.
The additional 24,000 that Carson Valley Chucker had donated across various projects,
Yeah.
we put into monitoring on the bi-state population.
And that was which project? It's not the telemetry project. Then it was put into. I was trying to figure out which. That wasn't put into the sage-grouse telemetry project. That was put into.
I believe it was a telemetry project, and I think if you look at the write-up on that, it was specific primarily to the bi-state population. And I think this project was listed separately.
So this
as
is
30,000.
this is the separate one that we're doing here, as opposed to. So I was thinking we'd already proved it in a matter of what,
I think
54,000.
the one we're talking about now is also on that list, Commissioner.
Yeah. Okay.
For 30, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, the
And then
30
we-
is sage-grouse telemetry project.
And
Yeah,
we
it's
matched that
30.
with 30 with mining, so that was
Yeah.
60. So we're going to take 20 out of mining.
And the
Asking
extra from the
for
Chucker
40.
Club
And there
went.
was a second, what was the second?
Didn't go to
project
this.
titled that was for bi-state? Do you remember? I don't have the
I
list.
don't
in front of
remember.
me.
It's just the work that we're doing in the Sweetwaters.
One way or another, you're requesting an additional 20
20
at this
grand
point.
out of the Upland Game,
For
expand a project you've already approved.
any other comments? The only comment I have is I've recently been given 11 days to listen to presentations and see Dr. Coates's data that he's gathering with this, and it's phenomenal, and it is one tool that's going to help us combat a listing. It is probably the best tool we have to do that. So any money and any information we can get out of that money is money well spent. As I said when I was on the sage-grouse committee, I agree the sportsmen are spending the money because it's important. I would like it if other people would spend that same money, that it's just as important to them. We are getting the money out of mining, but it's the citizens of the state that this is helping out, not just the sportsmen, and the sportsmen are carrying the water again, so.
Exactly, and this is intended with all opportunities to. I sent out the invites to the mines, and I've had discussions with them about this being a cooperator type of a partnership program where they typically pay for baseline studies anyways, but this was a way to put this technology at their fingertips, so it'll supplement that. But I'm looking that hopefully each one of these will be that much more meaningful, and we'll get partnership dollars from them as well. So that's the sole intent, is to bring forward sportsman dollars, the mining assessment fees, private mine dollars, and make this a pretty large and overarching and meaningful project.
All right. Seeing no further comment from the commission, this is an action item. Do you have anything else for us?
Not anything more, unless you need it.
Okay. We'll take it out to the public. Anybody have any? Rex?
Rex Flowers, Washoe County. We voted to support this, but as far as the money from the Carson Valley Chucker, originally when this project came forward at the commission meeting, It was reduced to 30,000 because of the donation that Carson Valley was doing, which was in the amount of 22,000 and a couple $100. And that's when the commission said, hey, you know, there's 20 grand that we don't have to spend, but we probably could spend and we should spend because it is sage-grouse. So it was my thought that the whole time we were trying to spend an extra 20 grand to help the sage-grouse.
Any other public comment? No cards? I'll bring it back to the commission. Any further discussion? Commissioner Rain?
You know, I've read over a lot of the data that's been coming out, and you know, we've been studying sage-grouse in the state since a couple decades before I was born. And I've talked to some of the people that were working back on studies that, you know, now are, call it, long of tooth, and they were doing it back when they were in their 20s. And, you know, it's interesting to see that the data that is coming out that they produced shows solutions to the problem. The problem is not necessarily getting the data, it's utilizing it once we have the data. There are some solutions to increasing the sage-grouse problem. However, it appears the department lacks the political will to exercise those solutions. So we don't, and while getting more data is always wonderful, we need to look at this thinking, hey, we've got somewhere in the realm of in excess of 50 years with studies. I don't know how many millions of dollars, but it's not 1 or 3. It's a lot. This Falcon Gondor project alone, what they've spent is a huge, amazing amount of money on that project. Additional data today, if it's not used to take action on the ground, it will be more money thrown in the wastebasket if you don't do anything with it. So while we might approve this today, and we can go ahead and get more data stating if we don't use it to actively increase the population of mule deer. I did shut that thing off. Not mule deer, sage-grouse, sorry. Sage-grouse, then we're throwing it in the wastebasket. Thank you.
Commissioner Drew?
I'll just make one comment that's relevant to the utility of the GPS collars, and I was able to sit in on a presentation by Pete Coates with USGS, and for the longest time we thought in the bi-state population that there were distinct population units, meaning that the birds in the pine nuts use the pine nuts and the birds in the sweetwaters use the sweetwaters, and so on and so forth. What they found this summer with birds on the pine nuts is they go from the extreme north end of the pine nuts to the extreme south end of the pine nuts, and if their broods failed, they flew from there across 395 to the west, went down that range for a little while, then flew across Antelope Valley into the sweetwaters. That's some pretty important information when you're trying to conserve a bird that covers that much area, and we need to know where those important areas are and how it all interconnects. So I think that the value in these GPS collars is just now, I think we're just now beginning to realize the utility of that.
Commissioner McNinch?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and I agree completely. Anybody that's been around long enough understands that they're landscape scale species, and you know, they don't use, I mean, they use everything, just depending on what time of year and what their needs are. So I agree, it's pretty invaluable, and it's a big state. We got a lot of sage-grouse habitat, and every place is just a little bit different, and this is the exact stuff that we need to understand if we're gonna have success in dealing with this issue.
Commissioner Macbeth?
Just a question, and Mr. Jenne isn't up here, but I'm just curious. Are these telemetry devices small enough to put on immature birds, chicks?
Alan, do you know, I don't think they have put them on.
No, they're weight restrictive, so, you know, typically they're targeted. Like, what we could actually do is we have abilities to go out like even this fall. So some of the juvenile birds we could put them on. But the chicks, those are typically so small. They do make some very small VHF type transmitters for those. But as far as the GPS technology, probably be most meaningful, and what we try to do and what USGS tries to do is try to target the hens on the leks, trap them before they're bred, and then follow them to the nests, get the microsite habitat parameters, you know, get a feel of what they go to nest in, and then follow them. If they're a successful brood, follow them and see what they're doing. So.
And so they're able to follow these nesting females, and when they're the hatchlings, and then they know whether she's brought off the brood or had all the hatchlings have perished. And one of the biggest things in wildlife management is knowing what happens from that day of birth for 6 months. That is the hardest part of the whole demographic analysis, is what's killing them, how many survived. And so we're getting better and better at it, but it's still a very difficult thing.
And one of the key things that USGS brings to this is that they have the ability to hire field crews at a greatly reduced labor cost rate. And so a lot of times they've got the guys out there that are actually following them up. And so they'll not only notice whether or not that nest was successful, but you know, whether that brood was successful. So it's a pretty good opportunity.
And while Alan's here, I wanted to say we have a new awards recognition program in the department established this year, and Alan was one of the first director's recognition award recipients for the work that he's been doing specifically in the Elko area, and his staff has been just fantastic, and they're the point of the spear when it comes to all these EAs and EISs, and been doing a fantastic job, so my hat's off to you again.
Thank you.
Alan.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other comments? Seeing none, call for a motion.
I'll go ahead and take a stab at it. I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to approve additional upland game bird stamp funds in the amount of $20,000 for the sage-grouse telemetry project. I don't see any number, but is that sufficient identification of the project?
Second.
We got a motion by Commissioner Macbeth, second by Commissioner Wallace. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Unanimous. Moving on, agenda item number 7, reports, informational, trapping committee, Commissioner McNitch.
Mr. Chairman, the trapping committee, since our meeting in Elko, we had an additional meeting this last Tuesday. We teleconferenced, and we had roughly 4 or 5 people in the Reno office, and 20, 25 plus down in Las Vegas. Commissioner Macbeth participated, so probably give us a better idea how many people. But the meeting generally ran pretty smooth, and we were very focused on wrapping up some language related to the Mount Charleston, the Spring Mountains, Mountain Springs area that's in the Spring Mountains and the Red Rock Conservation Area. And you know, in between, it's funny how the dynamics are changing. At our meeting in Vegas in middle of June, the Trappers Association presented a map, which we very much appreciated, and it delineated an area that they thought they could work with in terms of restrictions or limitations and new rules anyway. And it prompted a pretty active discussion. I think I reported on that in Elko. And subsequent to that, there was a little project creep, and the Nevada Trappers retracted their map, okay? And the committee and staff didn't have that to work from, so staff developed a new map to try to satisfy the motion that was made to identify areas where trapping would be regulated more, and that drew some real fire on a lot of different fronts. And we had a number of new folks joining the discussion. Some were very confused about what our meeting was even about. They were there for actual county commission issues and would get up in public comment. And anyway, it got real complicated, but a lot of folks from both sides have entered the discussion, and their demands are to do this and to do that, and you need to talk about this and you need to do that, and all things that we've already been through. So we had to carry that that with us a little bit through the process, and it slowed us down just a little bit, but it kind of brought up old memories and old thoughts and stuff, so we had to work our way through some of that. But more importantly, there were some things that came out of some of the emails and stuff that came in beforehand that I think are important to note under the item right here. When we had gone down to our June meeting, we put together a tour that was open to the public. It was notified and posted as such, and prior to that even occurring, the Trappers Association had offered, and matter of fact had stopped short of just demanding, but they were very strongly encouraged us to participate in an educational aspect where they would put on demonstrations for us, and at no time, and I think Joel would clearly state this, I know he would, it was intended to be an educational thing. It wasn't an opportunity, it was not billed as an opportunity to lobby the committee and get into our ears and things of that nature. It was simply a request to have the committee come out and get up to speed on some of the tools and some of the aspects of trapping that we may not be familiar with. And we did that, and it was very appreciative. But since then, now that things have kind of cooled off, people have had time to think about it, we received a lot of correspondence that laid claim that that the anti-trapping people, or the folks that preferred some trapping restrictions, had been given a day to lobby the committee, basically, and that the Trappers Association had to put on a barbecue at their expense, and et cetera, to get time with us. And I don't think Joel would agree that that's what happened. It was, I think that the system had a little more integrity to it than that, and so I want to get that out on the thing, that everything was open to everybody at all times. Trappers Association did something that was nice, and to provide us that look at things, and the folks that didn't participate on the tour, it was a personal decision. They had just chosen not to do it. It was open to everybody. So I want to make that clear, that there was that there was no shenanigans going on. We've been conducting our business in the open, and so I wanted to clarify that a little bit. Back to my where we were at with the actual process. During the meeting, there was an additional map proposed. We all received it today. I think the committee members received that map today from the folks that live on Mount Charleston. I haven't looked at it, don't have any idea what it looks like, and but certainly, out of respect for the people that put it together, we'll take a look at it. We do plan to have another meeting on August 28th, and the intent is to wrap up that particular portion of our discussions and considerations. And there were some new things that were that came out, and it had to do with the some activities of the Forest Service. They are in the process of evaluating the Mount Charleston area and the campgrounds and their utilizations and redesignation of trails. So there's a handful of things that kind of came out of the meeting that we hadn't heard much about before. I don't think any of them are significantly going to impact how we move forward, but things that certainly needed to be considered as part of anything that we do. Commissioner Drew made a motion to kind of knock us off center for moving forward. We've been criticized for not having, as a commission, for not having provided opportunities for people to speak. And during the meeting, people were very much anxious for us to move on and speed this thing up. So it's kind of this crossroads where you're trying to balance this public need and this public desire to make sure things are vetted. And then, anyway, the dynamics have changed a little bit, but Commissioner Drew made a motion to what the department had put out, which was largely intended to try to duplicate that original map that the Trappers Association had presented. And it might be easier for me to have you explain your motion if you could. It basically took an area where there is probably less discussion or less concern from all entities, all interests, kind of focused it on an area basically west of the connector road between Lee Canyon and Kyle Canyon. There's some roads or trails in there. I think you could designate them. You could probably make some arguments both ways on them. But the focus is really starting to narrow on where the sticking point could be. And I think Commissioner Drew Drew's attempt at his motion was to kind of peel that off and say, hey, if we're not having any major issues over here, then we'll focus on this. And so I think I'll let, if you don't mind, Commissioner Drew.
Yeah. Essentially, the draft language that we had before of us at the beginning of the meeting had a half-mile offset from residents in the Spring Mountain area, and there's also a portion just outside the National Recreation Area, and it's also outside of the congested area in Clark County. There's about 3 or 4 sections there that don't fall under either one of those categories, so it was included as well. So it's a half-mile offset from residents, with the exception of a box or a cage trap. The second provision in the draft language was a 1,000-foot offset from 4 roads, which seemed to be the most contentious issue, and a whole series of designated campgrounds and designated trails. And then that was essentially where we started from. So my motion was to essentially leave the offset from the residents the same, the offset, the 1,000-foot offset from the trails, campgrounds, and we added designated picnic areas, which came up in the discussions, to that 1,000-foot offset, and make sure it was inclusive of the exemption for box and cage traps. And then the motion took the 4 roads that have been most contentious and broke them out into a separate section with a 200-foot trapping offset from those. No exception for box or cage traps within that 200 feet. So essentially that's where we are at this point. The intent of the motion was to come back to the committee on the 28th, have some final discussions, and it's my personal hope that we get it out of committee at that point.
And as far as the time frame for moving forward, the intent is just exactly that, August 28th, to move that out. There have been some additional concerns I've heard that we're circumventing county advisory board processes. There's never been an intent to circumvent it. The timing is very difficult to orchestrate. We've had the discussion: do we take it to the advisory boards before? Do you take it to them after? The meetings. It gets complicated and difficult. But the idea here is that something will come out of the August 28th meeting. It'll go through the advisory boards, and we'll deal with it as an action item down in Las Vegas at our September meeting. So everybody should have plenty of opportunity to participate in the committee meeting and turn around and through the advisory board process, and then yet again as part of the commission. So there's ample opportunity, and I think that we will have worked that one over enough. And I didn't know if Commissioner Robb or Commissioner McBeth had any other comments.
Commissioner McBeth?
First of all, I want to thank the committee for all the work that they've done. It's taken, I think, a tremendous amount of pressure off both the county advisory boards and the commission itself. Obviously, it's placed a tremendous amount of pressure on the committee. But anyway, I think the access to ultimately the commission on this issue is much more than it ever could be if we did it solely at the commission level. Specifically with regard to Commissioner Drew's motion, when I actually testified, made a comment at the committee meeting as a member of the public, did disclose my position on the commission, and I did zero in on those 4 roads, and so I appreciate that that the motion took into account exactly what we were talking about. I also have had some further discussions with regard to some of those roads and the relative amount of use that's on those roads. And what I'm hoping that the committee and ultimately the commission will zero in on is that not only the activity that is occurring on those roads, but when the activity is occurring, because I think the bulk of the trapping is going to occur from November through February, and that is the critical time. And I'm going to try to make it a point between now and the next couple weeks to get up to some of these roads. I can tell you that Max Canyon Road, the times that I've gone in there in the wintertime, I've actually seen trucks with snowmobile, unloading snowmobiles and ATVs right there, and so I don't know if as much hiking and biking is going on there at that period of time. And so I'd hope that we'd get a little bit more information on the roads in there and zero in on that issue. And that, I think that'll maybe lead to a better resolution.
Commissioner Drew?
Yeah, I'll just make one other statement. And Commissioner McNinch mentioned that my motion might be a little more closely tied to what the trappers had proposed originally. Maybe he misspoke, but I think in my interpretation of it is my motion neither reflects what the Trapping Association wants or reflects what some of the citizens who've been working on this issue through the committee represents. It's kind of a hybrid of a lot of information we've received from both sides of this. So at this point, I don't think you can classify it as being favorable to one entity or the other.
I sure didn't mean to imply that. Yeah, I didn't take it that way at all. So.
Mr. Chairman, could I make a comment too about the Administrative Procedures Act and kind of what we've been doing so that it's very clear to everybody here in the commission? We're in a unique situation. Every time you get just before a session, you get to this deadline where either you've submitted things to LCB in time, and that's July 1 is the time that they can take a look at the proposed regulation and have their comments. They send it back to us. If you miss that July 1 deadline, then it becomes a temporary regulation, and we got to do this all over again, which is a huge expense, a needless huge expense in my mind, if we can come to an agreement on what the regulations might be. There's no presupposition that that's going to be the regulations that are going to be approved by this commission. What it does is gives the opportunity for the commission to make a few minor changes if they choose, and it becomes permanent if they choose, based on input from the public, to change the regulation significantly. Then it goes back to LCB, no harm, no foul, and it becomes a temporary regulation. So you're going to see two things. We took what we felt was the best shot at the time, sent it to LCB. We got that back. That's sitting there. The other thing is that we need to. Now I just had a senior moment. The second part of this Administrative Procedures Act. Can you help me out?
Substantial change in the.
Yes. So we're shooting for September, and to have this thing before the commission and the public to do a full review. You can hear it twice, and if you want to, at that point, you can promulgate the regulation. If you choose not to, that's okay. The next time you can do it is December. Okay, but in order to be prepared for September, we need to publish a notice, and that notice needs to be published Monday to let the public know that the commission is going to consider regulations. So there's no supposition that this regulation package is going to be approved. It's all a procedural aspect, and we want to hedge our bets, provide you both opportunities, either approve something that you've already been working on for a long time, a lot of discussions for both sides, and if there's not much in the way of changes, no harm, no foul, LCB won't have a problem with it. If there's significant changes, then it'll have to go back to LCB, and we'll have to work through and be ready to go in December. So is that clear to everybody, the process? It's independent of what's going on with the commission. So I'd heard from the public that they were concerned that there was backdoor deals and all this. We're just trying to meet the letter of the law and make sure that everything's square up for when you take action, you can take the right action and not be derailed and have to push things after January. Because I can tell you there's going to be a senator that's going to be rather upset if the regulations don't get in place before, for SB 226, before the beginning of the session. So we're kind of running up against that particular deadline.
Commissioner McNinch.
And this has nothing to do with SB 226, this particular phase of it.
I know, but she's already called. She's watching the regulatory process.
Okay,
and everything to do with trapping she's interested in. And so
understood. SB 226 is already down there. I mean, that's out of our hands completely. Rob? I'm hoping so, because certainly that came out of Elko and was forwarded on. And so we're working on stuff that doesn't have that legislative mandate pressure on it. If we have to have substantial changes that make this that LCB comes back and says we can't allow it to move forward as permanent and put it in as temporary when we're done, this committee's open to that. I mean, we're not feeling the push, but this SB 226 thing should already be moving forward, and we should be clear on it.
Yeah, for the record, Rob Bonamici, Chief Game Warden. Where we're at is the SB 226 portion has been gone through the entire process except for the legislative committee that reviews regulations. That occurs in Carson. So that needs to be done. They haven't set a meeting yet. We're speculating they'll probably set one in October. So that'll be final then at that point in time. This regulation with regards to Clark County, and Commissioner McNinch can correct me if I'm at all in error here, is a result of when we met to address SB 226, other issues came up. This Clark County issue came up with the Mount Charleston area, and they brought up what the committee felt were valid issues and needed to be looked at. So indirectly, it's a spinoff from SB 226, and that's where people need to have that clear in their mind, that SB 226, the charge from the legislature was to consider residential areas, trapping in residential areas. Then the question is, are these areas up in Mount Charleston residential areas or not? So that's where the confusion is. But this regulation, if passed in September by the commission, adopted by the commission, can then also be heard at that, what we're speculating will be an October committee meeting of the legislature, and finalized at that time.
So we will need to work on getting posted just in the event that we move forward on August 28th. So that would be, that's correct.
Hedging our bets.
Hedging our
If we don't, it's going to be a temporary reg. We got to go through the whole thing again, and we've limited our options. And I wanted to keep as many options available to the commission as possible.
And just like any other regulation you bring in front of us, we can deny it at that point.
Correct.
I mean, you're just bringing something in front of us. It
Correct.
doesn't mean it's going anywhere.
And what you've done, yeoman's job, is the public and the commission subcommittee's been involved this a long time. We have a lot of regulations you're going to see in September that hasn't gone through that process. Our normal process is to use the commission and the public hearing process to do it right then and there, and for non-controversial things. So, I mean, this is above and beyond, but it's a good thing, and we're going to get a good product out of it, I'm sure.
And I think our product will be much better because Commissioner McNinch, Commissioner Drew, and I had a chance to see it. We went down there, spent a day driving around. I looked at it on Google Earth a lot, talked to a lot of people. I have a whole different sense for the area, having been on that field trip, and appreciate everybody involved in that field trip. It was, as this committee goes, probably the most valuable day we had, just trying to familiarize ourselves with the situation we weren't familiar with, and now we can hopefully make a more informed decision that more reflects the area that we're dealing with. You have anything else, Mr. McNinch?
Nope, that's it.
Commissioner Drew?
No, the only point I had, and this is for the chair, is I do have 3 cards on 7A. It's an informational item. I'm not sure if you wanted to handle those now or in public comment.
What's that? Yeah, it's, I understand we do have cards on 7A. Sticking with past practice, we're not going to take public comment on an informational item. We can hold that comment until public comment, and you can comment on stuff on the agenda that's not an action item at that point. So hold on to those cards, and we'll recognize your comment at that time. Anything else on 7A at this point?
Yeah.
Commissioner Rain?
Thank you. I'm just going to read a few comments from one of the correspondents that kind of summed it up perhaps better than I can. This is from a gentleman on the, I believe, Mr. Anderson from down in Clark County. So I've watched the debate on trapping grow in our state, have been appalled by actions of those that seek to ban trapping altogether. Most unfortunate part of the process for me has been the acquiescence on the part of those in positions to make decisions to the demands of the anti-hunting few. Many claims have been made. He has a list of people, and they've been entirely unsubstantiated. And yet, despite that, they have been given most of the time, been catered to because they're persistent, unsubstantiated claims. Goes on that in my line of work, which I believe he is in law enforcement, people are considered innocent until proven guilty. In fact, I thought that was one of the premises of our justice system and legal system was founded upon, while the anti-trappers have made their claims, but have made no attempts to prove them. Trappers have been reached out to veterinarians and have received testimony from at least 5 vets in Clark County who have all said they have treated no dogs due to trapping injuries. While we are not willing to take this testimony into account, especially in light of the fact that those who are making the false claims have not brought anyone to the table who is willing to testify otherwise. The fact is there's no dog trapping problem on Mount Charleston. There is an honesty problem. There was some interesting input. He also mentioned some things in here about, let's see, it's been mentioned by others that the function of the Wildlife Commission is not to regulate pet control. The job is to discuss wildlife. There are pet control laws in place now that are sufficient to account for and do well in preventing domestic animals from being trapped. Why not push for more enforcement of those existing laws? There's extensive amount more, but that was a certain excerpt, and it kind of brings to light a bunch of the concerns that have definitely come out, and hopefully in this final regulation those concerns are definitely taken into account. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that a public comment or a comment from the commission?
That was comment from
That was comment from a commissioner. Commissioner McBeth.
I feel compelled to respond to that, the substance of what was read. All that's happened in this process is to give access to everybody equally to put forth their various positions, both from the trappers, the non-trappers, other sportsmen, and nobody has been chilled. Nobody has been not given the ability to have testimony come before this committee. I think the process has worked. While some may not like having issues discussed, the fact of the matter is that they needed to be discussed, and this committee has facilitated that, and everybody's had the same opportunity to bring forth and challenge whatever evidence was brought before this committee, and so I think the process has worked just as it should.
Any other comment? Commissioner McNinch, you done?
No, I appreciate the support. We get a lot of traffic. We get a lot of email traffic, and not a lot of happy folks out there on either side. And we're getting an equal number of emails from folks that have trapping concerns that we're acquiescing to the trappers. And it's an unfortunate situation. I think it could have been resolved long ago, so that the legislature didn't have to tell this commission what to do. That was beyond the vast majority of the folks that sit on this commission at this point in time. That opportunity presented itself. It didn't work. In my line of business, we have this thing called active managerial control. As a health agency, a health inspector, if a facility doesn't want to take control of their situation, then we do it for them. And what's happening here is that this commission at one point didn't take control of the situation that it needed to, and the legislature did it for them. So we're dealing with that, and unfortunately, the public is caught in the middle of that. Everybody's at arms with each other, and it's real unfortunate that that's happened. And I'm hoping that at some point everybody can look across the table and say, I still disagree with you, but maybe we can still be civil and move forward in a different direction, because there was a level of where things just weren't civil. And I do think that we at least have people sitting in the same room being respectful of each other. And there was a point where that wasn't the case. So I think we have progressed in a lot of different areas. The work that the committee's done, the members of the committee, I very much appreciate. I've been really laying it to them here. A lot of meetings, and they're lengthy, 3, 4, 5-hour meetings. And, I accept the criticism, and it's okay. It's part of the gig. I hope that people can put their swords down long enough to come to the table. And this is the challenge I threw out in Elko. If the people that have these interests aren't able to figure it out, you're putting it in our hands. You're telling us we can't figure it out, you do it. And that's what we're doing. So the challenge is, and hey, I understand, it borders on impossible because you're really cutting into your cores. I get that. But if the interest groups can't come to some kind of compromise, I hate the word compromise because that's not what this is about. We can't come to something to present to us, then it's our job to do that, and that's what we're doing. So we're just trying to be as respectful as we can about it, and we're going to have people that are they're upset about it, and I understand that, and these things pale in comparison to what we get for the bear stuff sometimes. So. Thank you.
Okay, no more on 7A. We'll move on to 7B, shed antler presentation, Chief Game Warden.